Please listen carefully.
Hello and welcome to the Film Revered podcast, episode number 15. This week brought to you by us, Film Revered. I'm your host, Zach Hamilton. Our guest for this episode is 5-time SAG Award-winning stunt performer Bobby Holland Hanton. But first, let's get into some Film Revered updates. First of all, I would love to give a big shout out to you, the fans of Film Revered, as our new show, 5 Questions, had an amazing reception. The premiere episode had over 1,000 combined views across the site, Facebook, and YouTube. And in case you missed it, I will leave a link to the premiere episode in the link dump in today's episode. Another announcement I would like to make is the fact that Film Revered's very own Lee Yang has recently been entered into the 2018 Rookies Awards. The Rookies Awards is sponsored by Autodesk and is an annual award and mentor platform open to young creatives in film, animation, games, VR, motion graphics, and architectural visualization. She will be showcasing her work from Lost Boys School of VFX, so please be sure to check out her page and her work in the link dump. Lastly, if you would like to receive all of your Film Revered updates first, be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Film Revered. Coming up next, I have an interview with stuntman Bobby Holland Hanton. Bobby has had a career spanning 10 years in which he's performed as Batman, James Bond, and Captain America's official stunt doubles. More recently, he can be seen as Thor's stunt double in Thor Ragnarok and the upcoming Avengers Infinity War. So please stay tuned as we will now be taking a quick commercial break. Film Revered has a big announcement to make. Starting last Wednesday, in an effort to further expand our audience, we began rolling out past episodes of the FR podcast onto our YouTube channel. We will continue to launch an audio-only episode every other day until the full catalog is caught up. 5 Questions, as well as the Film Revered podcast, will help to provide subscribers with guaranteed weekly content on the channel. If you are a fan of the FR podcast or just Film Revered, we encourage you to head over to our YouTube channel, Film Revered, and show your support by subscribing. Another way to access our YouTube channel is by going to filmrevered.com and hitting the big red subscribe button. Thanks as always to you, our wonderful fans, for continuing to show your support and help Film Revered grow. And now it's time to get back to the show. Well, thanks so much for joining me on the show today, Bob.
Thank you very much for having me, mate. Thank you very much,
Yeah, so in looking at your resume, you've had an impressive career, having been the stunt double for James Bond in Quantum of Solace, Batman in The Dark Knight Rises. However, what stands out most in your career is your work with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You've first started with working with Marvel all the way back in 2011 on Captain America, the First Avenger. What was going through your mind when you had booked a stunt role on that film?
Well, I'd actually, funny enough, I was with DC at the time. I actually was doing Green Lantern in New Orleans back in 2010. I finished that movie. I picked up a little injury while I was out in New Orleans on Green Lantern. I was doubling Ryan Reynolds on that show as Green Lantern. And as I said, picked up a little injury, came home, and the actual stunt coordinator at the time, Steve Dent, who was coordinating Captain America, First Avenger, called and asked if I could come on board, and it was just bad timing for me at the time. You know, I think he wanted me to double cap at the beginning, and I was just not ready, physically ready to be able to do that yet with an injury. So I had to turn it down for a minute, but then I literally came on and did the last 5 weeks, jumping around doing the bits and pieces once my body had recovered a little bit. Mm-hmm. So it was cool to make the transition, and and it is cool to jump between them. It's all the superheroes in both universes. That they're great, and the fans are a big part of that. So it's nice to be a part of both of them, really.
Definitely, yeah. So, Captain America, the First Avenger would only be the first of many Marvel films that you'd work on in your career. The next film was Thor, The Dark World, in which you were Thor's stunt double. You would then go on to work as Captain America and Thor's stunt double in Avengers Age of Ultron. Again, this is just your Marvel filmography, as you'd worked on 11 other projects between Captain America, the First Avenger, and Avengers Age of Ultron. That being said, how did it feel being cast as Chris Hemsworth and Chris Evans' official stunt double in that film?
Yeah, I mean, 2012 we did the Dark World, doubling Chris, and since then me and Chris developed a really good relationship, and he wanted me to go with him on his other shows. And when Avengers Age of Ultron came around, the stunt coordinator on that, Greg Powell, called me and said, "Look, I've got the job, and I know you're with Chris, but I'd also like you to," because Chris's stuff as Thor didn't come up straight away when we started the movie. I started that back in the January, and Chris's stuff was later on in the year with his schedule, whatever that was, working on other things, and having so many superheroes in one movie, it's hard to get them all at the same time. So it was scheduled out, and it actually worked out perfectly for me. The stars really aligned in that respect, because as I said, Greg Powell called and said, "Look, I want you to also double Cap." At the beginning, there's a sequence in Korea where he's, jumping from truck to truck. He's sliding on the back of a truck door. He's hanging off the front of a car. And it sounded amazing to me, jumping over cars and stuff. And
of course.
And I sort of, when he mentioned it to me, I said, how does that work with the Thor stuff? And he said, "Look, the schedule is what it is, and it turns out that we can get your, the Cap stuff done as you is doubling in South Korea first, and then we finish that sequence in Korea for 5 weeks, come back to the UK, have a few weeks to train, and then we'll be into Thor stuff." So, I mean, I don't even know if a schedule would ever work out that luckily for me again, to be able to do two huge characters like that and stunt double, two huge Marvel superheroes like that. So it worked out great. So I went to Korea. I was training every day, training five days a week as Cap, only once a day, because Cap's in great shape as well, but he's not as big as Thor. So, so I had to, restrict my training to make sure I could fit in the Cap suit in Korea. I did that five week sequence out there shooting. We rehearsed for about 6 weeks before that for the sequence, or 5 weeks or something like that. And then when I came home, I had about 4 weeks after that sequence to get to Thor shape. So I really, kicked into gear with the training twice a day and eating 8 meals a day. And luckily I got there just in time to double Thor. And so I ended up doing the both. But I mean, that's definitely a highlight for me in my career, and something that will stick with me for a long time. I was lucky enough to do them both in one movie.
Yeah, definitely. And, you'd mentioned getting in shape to fit in the costume. Now, I could be misinformed, but what I've heard from other people in the industry is that typically they're the same costume that you're wearing is the exact same costume that, like, measurement-wise, for the most part, as the actor. Is that accurate in saying that? Yeah,
I mean, the majority of the time, yes. And I think, it might be slight differences here and there, but generally, yeah. I mean, I'm slightly smaller in height than Chris. I'm a smaller shoe size, so certain things like that. But it's generally not far off for me and Chris when it's Thor stuff. But I mean, I'm naturally smaller anyway. I'm naturally a smaller frame, so it's hard and intense to train and get to the shape I need to get to. But it's part of the job, and I love doing it, and it's a challenge, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
Definitely. So shortly after Avengers Age of Ultron, you were cast as Chris Pine's stunt double in 2017's Wonder Woman, again, going into the DC universe here. If you had to choose, what was your favorite stunt you performed on Wonder Woman?
Well, Wonder Woman, again, was I got the call for, the Thor Ragnarok had been greenlit, and we were going to Australia for 6 months. But before that, a friend of mine, another stunt guy, Antol Kalik, who doubles Chris Pine all the time, called me and just asked if I could help out. We both doubled Channing Tatum on Jupiter Ascending, me and Antol, and he's a good buddy of mine, and we have trust and respect for each other. And I think he had to go home and have a baby, actually. So he asked if I could
right.
just step in, and I only did 5 weeks on Wonder Woman, Dublin Pine. So I stepped in for Antol and the stunt coordinator and second unit director and helped out with those guys. And no, it was great. There was a little sequence in the town square with Wonder Woman where she's jumping all over the place, battering people, and I was there with a gun, sliding around the floor, and and there's another sequence that there's a little fight in the helicopter, in the plane, which we did a bit of, and then jumping onto the plane and we're running along the tarmac and jumping onto the plane. So I did some bits and pieces on Wonder Woman. It was great to work on. What a good movie, and what great reviews it had, and that's had a powerful opening to the DC for Wonder Woman for sure.
Oh, definitely. And after completing your work on, Wonder Woman and everything of that sort, you also completed 3 seasons of stunt work on Game of Thrones before.
I did season 5, 6, and 7 on Game of Thrones, and I actually hadn't worked on any of the others before that. But me and my partner, we sat down and we said, let's start watching Game of Thrones. This was, way back before I even got the call for Thrones, but we were huge lovers of the TV show anyway, and at that point I was kind of like, look, I'd love to be able to get on that show and do some stunts one day. And then it turns out a friend of mine that I've known from my first ever movie, he's a really good buddy, an amazing stunt coordinator, and Rowley Earlham, his name is, called me and said, look, he was coordinating Thrones, did I want to come out and have a play? And I was just jumped at the chance. I was like, look, I love the show, big fan of it, I'd love to come out and do some stuff. So he got me out, and I did the last 3 seasons with him, and done some real cool stuff, and some fire burns in Spain, and then back in Belfast where it's freezing cold. But we did some boat flips, and took some reactions and bullet hits, and it was a lot of full on stuff over there. There's a lot of stunt performers. It was good fun over there with the team, and I love working with Rowley and those guys. So Game of Thrones was a good experience to work on. I'm pleased that's added to the CV, just being a big lover of the show.
Oh, yeah. And especially when you mentioned fire burns, I mean, one of your key scenes, which people can see in your reel, which will be, obviously this is pre-recorded, but we'll be sharing your reel kind of to help promote your episode tomorrow on Saturday. But you can actually see one of those shots in there, and it's a key scene in the show where it's one of the first times you see the dragons really come to, Daenerys' defense in the Colosseum, and you're one of the people being burned in that sequence, which is insane. Yeah,
it was full on. I mean, Rowley, he called and said, look, do you want to do this burn? And I was like, yeah, okay, sounds awesome. Sounds great. Let's, we go to Spain. It's already hot in Seville in Spain anyway.
Yeah.
Just bear that in mind. But, we rehearsed it dry, a dry run of what we would do. And, all the guys, we came out and we put all our fire gear on and fire protection and gel, and went out and did it. We got hit by flamethrowers, which were pretty hot and full on. So you got the added heat of Seville plus the flamethrowers on you. So it was definitely warm, but a great experience. And as soon as we had finished the shot, and managed to, the safety boys ran in and made sure we were okay and got the masks off. The buzz was just, electrifying. It's so hard to explain, and I just wanted to, let's gel up and go again. It's one of those things. It was so enjoyable and such a buzz for me as a stunt performer to be able to do something like that on such a big show. And it was a great experience. So I thank Rowley for giving me the opportunity.
Definitely. And so again, as we touched on, shortly after Game of Thrones, you went on to be the stunt role for Thor and Thor Ragnarok. How did you prepare for your role in the film?
Preparing for Thor was, again, it's one of those where it's, I try and train on a regular basis anyway, and just keep in a position, physically where I can transform into what I need to within, a month or 5 weeks. That's generally where I try and sit on a regular basis, because you never know what call you're going to get. But I knew Thor was happening. We didn't know the exact dates, and it got pushed and then it brought forward again. So once we got the call and we were going out in May of 2016. Well, it's 2018, isn't it? So yeah, 2016. I'm losing my time. It was one of those where I was like, okay, right, we start. We'll have I think we had an 8-week prep period, which I could, really intensify the training and push it up, ramp it up to 2 sessions a day, and crank on with the meals and make it 8 meals a day, which is full on. Just the training and the the diet regime is almost a job in itself. It really is. It's difficult to maintain for long periods of time. But I have done it for long enough now, and I kind of know little secrets that work for me and what.
Yeah.
I think the muscle memory's there, which is always helps. But just the prep for it, being that size for 6 months, and because it was, the standalone Thor movie, there's obviously it's all about Thor, and there was lots of stunts to do, lots of fights, lots of rehearsals, lots of previs to shoot. And it takes a toll. It's quite hard on the body. It's full on. But again, it's one of those things. It's part of what we do. It's the nature of our job. So, you just got to kick back and crack on with it. And as I said, I picked up a few injuries on that show as well. I snapped my groin 4 weeks into rehearsals doing a stunt. It was a kickflip just on a little handball cable. It was going to be in the arena when he fights Hulk. This move that we came up with. And it was just unfortunate. I really went for the kick and I hyperextended and snapped my groin. So I was 4 weeks in and snapped my groin. So I was then rehabbing and trying to rehearse and making sure I could get through it. And 11 weeks later, I missed about the first 3 weeks of shooting as Thor double, but came in for the sequence with Hela, played by Kate in the throne room. So my first stunt back after that injury was a huge wrap where I go to stab her with the staff and she catches it, spins me out, and I do like a 4 twists to the ground. Oh yeah. But one of those type of things is, you're wrapped up and you do the wrap and do the twist, and when it unravels you, as you can see, at some serious pace, which wants to open your legs up. So that's the last thing you want when you've just snapped your groin. But it was good. It was strong. I was ready for it. And, we put all the safety precautions in place to make sure that I was ready. And, touch wood, I was okay.
Good deal. No re-injury. Don't want to re-snap anything.
I don't want to re-snap anything, mate. No, nothing at all. I'd rather stay intact.
Yeah. So lastly, what's it been like working with Chris Hemsworth over the years? Again, having been his double in 6 films so far, and then obviously you have more films coming up. What's that relationship been like?
Listen, I mean, it's been nearly 6 years now that I've been working with Chris closely, and, we've become very good friends, and he's like family now, It's he's such a good guy to work with and work for. We have so much fun. We're the same age, we've got similar sense of humours, it just works great. And, we've developed, he's developed a trust in me to make sure that he looks good and he's okay. And, that's my job to do. And you couldn't wish for any, to do it for anyone else, because, we're super, as I said, really close friends and love working with him, get to travel the world, meet amazing people, and get to do some really cool stunts with him and play different characters. But it's an absolute dream come true to get to work with someone like Chris.
That's awesome. And speaking of working with Chris Hemsworth, and we touched on more films coming up, you've been cast as Thor's stunt double in the upcoming Avengers Infinity War, and then the coming Avengers Infinity War Part 2, again, working title, not sure what they're going to go with that. But in looking back at your first role at Captain America, First Avenger, did you have any idea that you would end up having such a long career within the MCU?
Definitely not. I guess you just take each job as it comes, really. So when I got the Green Lantern call, when I got the Cap call, you kind of like, oh, this is awesome. This is great to be a part of, and I'm looking forward to the challenge. And time flies so fast when you're busy, and you get that show done, and you get a call to do another show, and you just go on to the next and on to the next, and before you know it, you're 10 years in. I'm 10 years into my career. You look back and you're like, wow, I can't believe how many big blockbusters that I've worked on and been privileged to. So I feel very blessed to be in this position, very lucky to be where I am now, and may it continue. But I never thought that, I'd still be doing Marvel movies now to this point. So it's great. And all the time that it's there, I'd love to be, keep being a part of it, and, let's see what happens. But yeah, Infinity War is going to be blockbuster huge. It's going to be ridiculous.
Oh yeah, I can only
Part
imagine.
2 is going to be even bigger. So yeah, watch this space, guys. Next month it comes out, 27th of April. The world release. So it's pretty. It's going to be pretty huge.
Oh, definitely. You know, and I'd love to kind of touch on some overall career questions. Again, we've been more specific with your, past films, but I'd love to know, do you have a checklist of stunts you've wanted to perform since you started? And if so, what stunts were on the list and have you checked everything off?
Yeah, I think on the list, a fire burn, a full fire burn was on the list, and I don't think I could have done a bigger one than the one I did on Game of Thrones. So I've ticked that box for sure, which is great. You always want to do 100-foot, full. So I did, nearly two of those on Dark Knight Rises as Christian Bale's, character. First off, as Bruce Wayne, when he tries to climb out of the prison that Bane puts him in.
Oh, yeah.
So we did that sequence there, and that was my first, I think we were 100 feet. So that was my first one at 100 feet, which was a huge buzz again. And then I jumped out of the window, went to see the character goes to see Gary Oldman's character in hospital, goes and sees him, and then I jump out the window in a suit. I think that was about 85 feet. So I did two of those on that show, which were amazing, and that's another one to tick off. They're always, good fun, height work. And I also, on The Huntsman, we did a sequence where, Chris's character, the Huntsman, he jumps off of a castle face, which was a 45-foot free jump into boxes, and then it cuts into the next sequence, the next part of it where he lands from that jump onto a roof that was a 40-degree angle, and that was 40 feet up as well. And we did that in two parts where I hit and I jump out of a cherry picker and just hit from 40 feet and 40-degree angle, as I was saying, and I just free fall roll down the face of the the castle, which we put that sequence together, and I was pleased and proud of that. That looked great. So I was happy to do that. So that's another one that was great. You don't often get many opportunities to do something like that. They don't come every day, so that was real nice to do that. And it was all free with no wires. It was, I did it all with no wires. So that was also, again, a big accomplishment for me. And then on obviously my first ever movie, Quantum of Solace, I did my first ever stunt at 2 a.m. in the morning in the slums of Panama. I jumped from one balcony to another, and we were like 2-3 stories up, and no wires, no cables, nothing. It was all free, and no mats. So yeah, that's a standout one. I did a similar one on Prince of Persia as well, where you jump from one side of the castle to the other, no cables. So I've done some things that I'm very proud of that have stuck out in my career. That I'll be proud to show kids and grandchildren when I'm older of those stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, and kind of getting onto the Panama stunt here. The question I have for you is, what's the most dangerous stunt you've done? Again, you mentioned 2-3 stories up, no cables, no wires, and no mats or boxes underneath. Would you say that that's the most dangerous, or is there something higher than that?
It's certainly up there. We did that jump in Panama is certainly up there, and we did I also did the chase sequence where I'm chasing a very, very good friend of mine is also a stuntman that was playing the character. His name's Glenn Foster. So I'm chasing him across the rooftops as Bond in Siena, that was a really exciting sequence for me to do. My first movie, my first huge sequence, and we were 200 feet up in the air on these 150 feet, I think it was maybe, in Siena, these buildings that jumping from rooftop to rooftop, jumping from balconies, crashing through tables, jumping through windows, jumping onto buses. So again, that was an opportunity given to me by the stunt coordinator Gary Powell, which I'm forever thankful for, and to give me that opportunity and give me my first chance really to break onto the stunt circuit. So I'm very grateful for that.
I love how you describe that. It's almost, again, you're chasing your friend in this case, obviously both playing different roles, but it sounds like you've described the most extreme case of tag.
Yeah,
running through buildings, crashing through windows,
really
tables.
It's almost like saying to your friend, "Come on, let's try and find the best way to play tag as possible." But exactly. It's definitely that sequence. All of that is definitely standout. And there's certain things that you do. I did a jerk through a pane of glass on a ratchet pull, and through a pane of glass on Jupiter Ascending. I dropped through a pane of glass on Jupiter Ascending. There's lots of things, and that we do, but I have to stress that we put the safety things in place. There's a rehearsal structure that, we'll start the movie maybe 9 weeks, 10 weeks before they start to shoot, and we'll break down the scripts and rehearse these stunts and go in increments to make sure it's safe, because the nature of the job is dangerous, and it's up to us to make sure we're as safe as we possibly can be.
Yeah, and you mentioned Jupiter Ascending. I actually have seen that exact shot you're referencing. My question would be, again, you mentioned pane of glass, not breakaway glass or anything like that. So in that situation, again, for safety measures, are they detonating that right before you get to it, or are you just going right through it?
Because the pane was such a big piece of glass. It was real glass. It was toughened glass, but it was like 12 mil of glass. And there's a special effects team that are sitting, very close by with a very great view of the stunt, and they will literally. They've got detonators inside of the glass, and they'll just before I hit it, they'll punch it to break it, and then I would finish it and go through and crack it. So at least it starts to crack instead of a human body going through it. So, but a lot of trust in those guys, because the ratchet and the pull is so fast. So it's one of those things that is a timing thing, and we rehearsed it, and thankfully it went absolutely amazing. We did one take. The Wachowskis that directed it were so happy, and we moved on. So, yeah, I mean, normally it would be sugar glass, but the pane was such a big piece, the sugar glass would just crack on its own. It was 12 mil toughened glass. But no, that was definitely an adrenaline rush for that one. But again, I'm super proud of that. It went really well, and the same with me dropping through the glass. It's the same scenario, and just very thankful to the whole stunt team, and thankful to the special effects guys that were detonating.
Yeah, not a lot of room for error in that. So.
Not a lot of room for error, mate, at all. So yeah, once that went well, we had a beer afterwards, and that was thanks for that, guys.
Yeah, come really close together after that point. You're like, my life was in your hands. Let's have a beer.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
And you had mentioned prior on the show here that you'd been injured, little injuries here and there, and then the snapping of the groin, which I would categorize as a pretty severe injury in my case. But have you ever been severely injured on a stunt, actually in hospital for a long extension of time, or? Yeah,
I mean, as I said, along the way you pick up little injuries here and there, but I've had trouble in the past with back injuries, and that's one of those things. Again, I think that's genetics, and being a stuntman obviously is not going to help the situation. But as I said, we try and keep our body strong and all that, to make sure we can continue doing these things. But touch wood, I've been okay. In the past 10 years, I've done pretty well to picked up. As I said, you do pick up injuries here and there. Your shoulders get sore, and you bust your shoulders a few times doing stuff, my back, your neck, you put your neck out, or whatever it may be, but roll an ankle. But generally I've been okay.
Well, that's great to hear, obviously. Taking a more serious turn, given the recent deaths of stunt performers John Bernecker of The Walking Dead and S.J. Harris of Deadpool 2, we had talked about safety and how your guys have always, taken extreme measures in keeping you safe. What is your current stance on safety for stunt performers, and do you think certain measures could still be implemented to help prevent serious injury and or death in the future on maybe television shows versus film? Yeah, I mean, they're absolutely tragic what has happened to those guys. It really is tragic. And as I said, I want to stress that we really do take so much time in preparing the stunts and safety, and we don't, not to rush and make sure that everything is in place. And we really do that. And sometimes mistakes or sometimes accidents happen. I mean, it's so hard to, I wasn't there on either of those, so I wouldn't be able to say what happened or what but it's such a tragic thing and so unfortunate. But we really do, as a stunt community, really take it seriously, the safety, and we really do try and implement every precaution that we can to make sure that it's as safe as it possibly can be. And you know what, there are stunts you get knocks and bangs. That's just the nature of the stunt. Sometimes you might get, I've got to do a ratchet onto some stairs or whatever it may be, and you're like, oh, you just got to suck this one up. It's sometimes there are those stunts, but then that is part and parcel of it, and
we know what we're signing up for, and it's about trying to make it as safe as possible. But I mean, all I can say is stressing is trying to, nothing to be rushed. Stunt shouldn't be rushed, and the majority of the time we don't get rushed. It's but I can't talk for other sets, and I just know that is one thing that it has to be, I think, maybe taken more seriously. Maybe, I don't know, about rushing the stunt or trying to move on quickly to get to the next. As I said, stunts are dangerous, but generally speaking, for myself and the people that I work with and been lucky enough to work with, and we've never had any real problems like that, and everything's in place to make sure it's done safely.
Exactly. Well, a big thank you to Bobby Holland Hanton for joining me on the show today. You can see his most recent work in the upcoming Avengers Infinity War, which premieres this month on April 27th. Thanks again for being on the show, Bobby.
Zach, thank you very much for having me, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, that's the end of episode 15 of the Film Revered podcast. Be sure to show your support for the FR podcast by leaving a review on iTunes, Google Play Music, or wherever you happen to listen to the show. Another great way to show your support is by subscribing to our newly revamped YouTube channel, Film Revered. Thanks again from all of us here at Film Revered. Have a great week.